This is my second presentation on YouTube on a definition. I am far more confident doing this one, which is about branding, as it is my forte, where I have over 20 years of first-hand experience. I can already see a pattern or routine forming on how I like to do these presentations. So let's jump straight to it in checking out the definition of branding within the Oxford Dictionary. We've got A. Mark with a branding iron. I always think out when I hear this one. We have B. To mark indelibly, that is, permanently. We have C. To mark out as having a particularly bad or shameful quality. Well, that's interesting. And important to point out that branding can have both positive and or a negative connotation. We've got D. Assign a brand name to, that is, cut price branded goods. I guess this means the selling of a product at a reduced price that are synonymous with quality. Including D into this, that is bad or shameful quality, just wouldn't make any sense. Then we have E. None of the above, or some of the above, or all of the above. Okay, I'm just kidding. The definition alone is about as useful as a chocolate teapot. So let's start off with what branding isn't. Contrary to popular belief, a brand is not a logo, corporate identity, advertising, or marketing as you would expect. These are tools. Marketing is confidence, passion, a sense of belonging, feeling safe and secure, a set of unique values we can relate to, and a call to action. Notice how these are all feelings. By the time we finish, you will understand it is how a brand makes you feel that determines what we buy far more than the attributes of a product. If you have ever taken a diploma or a degree in business studies, there will be a module in there somewhere about the fundamentals of marketing. It will explain about how you need to come up with all of the unique selling points, otherwise known as USPs, that demonstrate why your product is better than that of your competitors, and to justify your product's price point. You will also be asked to provide snippets of the company's mission statement that explains a little bit more about the company itself. These are merely, however, the fundamentals you must furnish a marketing professional with at the very starting point. Believe it or not, these are not as important as you think. History shows that actually the brand itself is far more important than the unique selling points of a product, as business is about people and your target audience must be able to relate with your company and your brand in order to trust you enough to part with their money. The reason for this is very simple. Most consumers, when they buy something, do not know enough to make an informed decision. As all unique selling points and specifications are not provided in a like-for-like format, they find it too difficult to compare, and so they rely on gut instinct, which kicks in automatically when we have to make a decision and we don't know enough to use the power of reason. To fill in the void of the unknown, we concentrate without even realizing on what we do know, and for this, we look for familiarity. Branding as we know it has evolved over the years via trial and error. Even knowing what we know now about psychology, if we were to start off from scratch, I think we could not understand it as well as we do now from what we have learned over the last 300 to 400 years. Originally, in the mid-17th century, branding was for cattle, a mark of ownership. Of course, some breeders reared their cattle better than others, and it wasn't before long that branding became synonymous with quality, and even burned on wooden cases of wine from the likes of France as a guarantee of good source. You can identify the success of a brand and whether they have achieved the goal of familiarity for their target audience, or the entire public for that matter, known as public awareness, by whether their brand name has become a verb, and I will give you 2 examples. In the United Kingdom, one of the most popular brands of vacuum cleaner is that of the Hoover. However, even if you have a Dyson, which is also a very prominent player within vacuum cleaners, consumers will quite happily take their vacuum cleaner out of the cupboard and tell you they are going to hoover the carpet. Not vacuum the carpet, not Dyson the carpet, but actually hoover the carpet, as in to describe the action. Another example of this is sticky tape. We have a brand here called Sellotape, and will quite happily proceed to sellotape a poster to the wall, and say so regardless of whether the brand is Scotch or anything else. We simply mean sticky tape. I could give you many more examples, but I think you're getting the point. So we have deduced that when we don't know what choice to make, we rely on our gut reaction and how we feel. And we now understand how marketing professionals use this trait to their advantage. Again, brands are synonymous with quality. They invoke desire through familiarity, and they help us fulfill the need to belong. We now need to understand how this is possible and why we make a decision to take action when we don't know enough to use the power of reason. So where do these feelings come from? Well, my understanding of this is that this is not psychology. This is more to do with biology. I am not a psychologist, however, nor a biologist, but as a branding specialist, I can tell you that my conclusion does feel right. Actually, this is not just my conclusion. We've known this for years, and now, so do you. There are two main parts of the human brain. Yes, there are more, and this is oversimplified, of course, but we'll say for now that there are two parts with multiple parts, because this is good enough to explain how brands persuade you to choose them when buying products or services. The oldest part of the human brain is so archaic and prehistoric that it doesn't even understand the language. For the purpose of this talk, we will call this the limbic brain, that communicates by chemically induced emotions from endorphins, dopamine, serotonin, and oxytocin. The other part that separates us from the animal kingdom and gives us the power of reason, we will call the Neanderthal brain. This is the part of the brain that we think of as our brain. And as you hear yourself think and reason with yourself, this is where that comes from. When making decisions that are important to us, we like to think, of course, that we always use the power of reason, comparing products like for like and making that ultimate decision. Of course, we don't always know enough to do this and use our Neanderthal brain, that is, the power of reason. And our limbic brain kicks in and uses the law of familiarity to help us determine the choice we believe feels right. In other words, intuition. Our limbic brain, intuition, or gut instinct, if you will want to go with the option that is most familiar, considered the most popular, trustworthy, and the brand, not necessarily the product, they can relate to the most. We perceive brands similarly to how we perceive people. This means from an accounting perspective, we cannot from an advert in a local newspaper calculate the return on investment based on sales thereafter, as to build a brand that your prospects are indeed familiar with takes time. That is why we handle these figures differently and from an opposite direction of cost to acquisition. That is, how much did the sale cost as opposed to the return on investment of how much did we make for every dollar spent, as we don't know the full impact of that dollar yet, as it will have further impact in the future. This is just the very basics for you to understand the fundamentals. To understand more, you will of course have to research more or employ someone like myself. But this is a very good start. If this was of interest to you, and you could be interested in perhaps reading an entire book, please let me know in the comments, as that's exactly what I'm thinking of doing. I hope you liked this presentation and would be very interested in any comments you may have below. And if you liked it and would like to see more videos like this, please don't hesitate to subscribe.